Morning, everybody. Surprised to see me so soon? Well, guess what? We're here at the Billington Heights Railroad crossing in western New York. This is in the town of Elma, and I've gotten word that we got a northbound Buffalo and Pittsburgh train coming this way. This is train Sibf. It's a train originating in Pennsylvania and will be heading towards its main yard at Tift Street in Buffalo. Now, of course, this line, as you probably don't know, is that this track was originally built for the Pennsylvania Railroad. That's PRR. This line first came through here in 1867, and of course where you saw in East Aurora, if you've seen the wreck video, that was where it originally came through. The original depot on Riley Street is still there, and it was there until the 1950s or 60s when it merged with New York Central and became Penn Central. And then after that it was bought out by Conrail because Penn Central had gone bankrupt. And after Conrail, this began turning to the Norfolk Southern Railway. My apologies, there are cars passing at the crossing right behind you. And after Norfolk Southern had it for a few years, it was given to the Genesee and Wyoming Company. And the railroad that was given was the Buffalo and Pittsburgh. You probably can't see it on that sign back there. Its symbol is there. So in case you're seeing that, that's a no trespassing sign. So whatever you do, don't go walking down this line. That is trespassing on railroad property. But I've just gotten recent word that the train has passed Warner Hill Road, which is in South Wales, and it should be here in just a few minutes. And my gosh, it's been a long time since I've caught a day train here. But obviously because of the coronavirus and because of the wreck on top of that about a month ago, well, obviously activities picked up a little bit. So, a fun fact about this is if you look way down there, this track used to be a lot lower than it was. And the reason for this is because back in the early days, which was from the 1860s to the 1920s, these tracks were actually down more at ground level. The crossing here actually comes up a steep grade now. It originally wasn't like that. For the reason because this track used to be a two-track main line for the Pennsylvania going from here to Pittsburgh. But in the 1930s, there was a plan put out to reduce rail grade crossings. And with that plan, that meant elevating a lot of railways in order to get these crossings out. Now, of course, where I am at Billington Heights, I'm not sure when this crossing was built here, but this was built much later. It was probably about 1935 that these tracks were elevated. And believe it or not, through most of East Aurora, a lot of the old track bed and rails still lie underneath this elevated land. And believe it or not, I have seen some of those rails. There's an antique shop in East Aurora where there's a buffer behind it. And believe it or not, there's evidence of a ramp that would go down past the Fisher-Price factory there. And what it would do is it would loop behind onto Riley Street, and there's an old building there that used to be a coal company that's now called Taste, which is a restaurant, which used to be called Tantalus before it. And with that, what happened was those tracks would bring the coal down there. I've seen this in a photograph. If I can find it again, I might show you guys. But anyway, these are the tracks as we see it today. It is the Buffalo and Pittsburgh main line. These are its only track to get from Buffalo to Pittsburgh. And as such, this is why it can be so busy. Usually, we see about, say, probably in the past most of the trains would come in during the night. Probably one between 9 and 10 p.m. and another one between 1 and 3 a.m. But now we've been getting like about 4 trains a day on average. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and 2 at night. But there have been some days that I've been catching that we've been hearing extras, as my friends of the Railfan group I'm a part of have told me. Is that they run Saturday extras sometimes, and sometimes they also run Sunday extras. Now normally you don't see a train run on Sundays, but when it does, it's a rare occurrence. Oh, and anybody in case was wondering about the hat I'm wearing, this is a New York Central hat. It's my favorite railroad because, well, it's New York State. Our railroad was named after it. And, yeah, I mean, what can I say? It's fun. But soon we're hoping that that train should be coming. So make sure you stay tuned because guess what? It's a part of rail fanning. You go out there and you chase the trains. Oh, another fancy piece of information if you guys would like to know. Well, I might as well say it anyway. But the Fisher-Price store, which is basically its headquarters here, back in the day, this railroad actually used to deliver to and from Fisher-Price. Believe it or not, a woman who I know that lives all the way up on a hill over there, I was able to go down by the tracks from her house and do a little investigation. And what I found was there are old sidings that are still left from that day and age. And because of that, the sidings are still there at Fisher-Price. The reason was because before Fisher-Price decided to move its business to China where they could make it cheaper, and of course what cost a lot of Americans their jobs for that, basically what happened was when there'd be big deliveries, a train would come down here. Now, this was also back in the day when, believe it or not, this railroad for a time actually had passenger service. But this was back finishing up when it was Conrail. And down in the town, as you did hear about what me and Western New York Railfan, or excuse me, not him, Buffalo Mainline said at the day of the crash, there's a siding there. That siding used to be a lot longer, because I've seen it. It used to be a lot longer because of the increased activity because of passenger traffic. Because they would stop at the station on Riley Street, and other freight trains would have to go by. But further down, because of the switches, they would be able to back those train cars right into the back end of Fisher-Price. And those rails are actually still there. Why they haven't removed them, I do not know. They're just all covered in underbrush and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things you can find out when you do a little digging in your local history. And, well, that's the big thing. Now, supposedly, at some point in time, I have talked with the local historical society, the Western New York Railway Historical Society, and supposedly, they want to get a big excursion line going. Now, for any of you who don't know what an excursion railroad is, an excursion railroad is basically a pleasure ride for tourists to come down. There are about 3 of them that are in Western New York that run regularly. There's the most famous, which is the Arcade and Attica Railroad, which used to run between Arcade and Attica, but it only runs to couriers now. Oh, hello! I didn't even see it coming! I would love to hear that little blooper in the comments. Now wasn't that fun? That's rail fanning at its finest. Now, as you probably saw, if you guys remember seeing my little video before, I saw two of those SD60s that I saw a while ago. What you also noticed was there was a switcher locomotive on that. There were at least two SD40-2s, two SD60s, and a switcher unit. I think the switcher was probably an Alco T6, I want to guess, maybe? But you could probably correct me in the comments, but how about that little funny bit for you, huh? Well, in case any of you were wondering about the vibrations, it's because there's a little joint in the tracks right over here, right next to where the camera is. That's why it was doing all the vibrations. And as you know, I'm recording from my phone, so there you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this little next bit of Western New York rail fanning. Take care.